Welcome to CONVO, a live stream podcast about the intersection of creativity, art, and new technologies. Each month, we bring you 2 episodes featuring compelling and knowledgeable guests who are at the forefront of these exciting fields. I'm your host, Mark Redito. Let's dive into this episode. We've seen AI take over the world with new tools and improvements being deployed almost at a month's cadence. It's that fast. We've seen Microsoft and Google participating in these AI wars, trying their best to fully capture this emerging market. On the other side, we have open source projects like Stable Diffusion and Dance Diffusion, along with numerous community-generated collab notebooks that enable access to these models. And these aim to empower artists and non-artists alike with this newfound generative creativity. I'm personally interested in this technology and have been playing with them in my own work, but it's uncertain how these technologies will mature and impact the world widely. So, I'm bringing someone who is fully on the ground, working in the trenches, to speak from their point of view, what these technologies are, and how they can enable and empower artists, and also to share insights and takeaways from their own generative AI music project. Our special guest for today is CJ Carr from Dadabots.
Yeah. I'm on the internet. Whoa.
CJ, welcome to the show, bro. How are you, man?
I hope this is used as training data in the future for some simulacrum.
I think it will be at some point, bro. Absolutely. We have like an AI CJ. I wonder what AI CJ would say.
Well, I mean, the trick just for future developers, get the JPEMs as high as possible. JPEMs are jokes per minute. If the model can't hit it, then you didn't do a good job.
That's the new metric, JPM, jokes per minute. Bro, grateful to have you here. And we have so many things to talk about, and I can't wait to dive in. But first, can you please give us an introduction of yourself and what brought you here to this space? And, feel free to go as detailed as you want.
Hey, I'm CJ. I'm in this extreme AI sound artist duo called Dadabots. We're like a hackathon team /band /AI lab, like whatever an AI music production project, whatever it is, that's what we are. And we just had our 10-year anniversary. We've been
10 years?
We've been making this crazy music forever. Most of y'all just showing up for the first time. Yeah.
Well, I know that the stream has been going on for a minute now, or the 24/7 Dadabots stream, but I didn't realize 10 years.
Yeah. And we started, we wanted to make we were making extreme music. We were making like mathcore and black metal and punk. Zach was in a touring punk band. I was like just trying to create weirdo music like earth metal, spiral trance, like breakcore, noise projects, drone projects, just like what's the most, like I feel like I've heard all of this kind of music, but what doesn't exist yet, let's try to do it. And just realizing that instrument, like it's the regular band format, is kind of very limited what you can do. And even DAWs with the available synthesis and sampling was also very limited. And we were Zach and I, so I was studying computer science and he was studying music technology, and then we just did a skill swap and we met as interns at Berkeley College. And he taught me about Max MSP and what a Fourier transform and a spectrogram was, and then I showed him how to use Python and JavaScript. And then we were just interns. They weren't really looking over our shoulder too much. We were just kind of goofing off, listening to crazy music like Dylan to Escape Plan, and just trying to plotting like how we can make ridiculous music. And also at the same time in the Boston area, there were like hackathons, and there's a lot of music hackathons popping up. I think I was just lucky to be in this part of the world at that time, because the Echo Nest was there, and they were just throwing these monthly events, and they were just showing you the Echo Nest Remix API, and this was just one of the earliest libraries. where you could pull on a song and you get like an analysis of all the beats, and then you can rearrange the beats. And
Wow.
that was like our first step. It was like, okay, let's just use this as our hackathon project. This was at a music hack day MIT. And we made these like SoundCloud bots, and they would spider SoundCloud for people's music, and then remix it using this beat rearranging, and then just post it. And we'd do it like hundreds of times a day, over and over and over. And then the bots would get banned, and we just make new ones. And that's how it started.
Dude, I feel like there's a lot of like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like there's a lot of like creative sort of like trolling energy that Dadabots has, like with that SoundCloud bot. Dude, so what does that SoundCloud bot do exactly? Does it scrape the whole SoundCloud and then sort of like re-upload it? Like what's going on?
Oh yeah, so we made a ton of them, like a couple dozen. I think the most popular one was called Auto Chiptune. It would just turn your music into chiptune.
Love it.
Yeah, and how would it find music? It was just random. But there was a higher likelihood. So if you were following the bot, that's right, you had to follow the bot, and it would most likely remix one of its followers.
Oh, sick!
And then it would leave a comment on the track, like, "Yo, I remixed your track," or "Sick tune, can I remix it? Here you go." And then you'd hear this fucked up like noise version of your own song. Or if it's autotune, actually, that was like maybe the most coherent. Chiptune was the most coherent.
Yeah. I feel like there's a fidelity in chiptune that sort of maybe allows, or maybe is a little more forgiving, because you're limited to like certain bands or certain frequencies, right? That's really so fucking cool, man. I didn't know that. I'm hearing that for the first time.
Yeah,
that's so amazing.
Yeah, that was a really fun project, and yeah, the low fidelity genres are way easier to work in. And black metal is it's supposed to sound shitty. It's supposed to be low definition, and it turns out it works really, really well for neural synthesis too.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I was re-listening to your episode with interdependence. And I remember that you said something like along the lines of there's something about that neural net aesthetic that sort of like lends itself like beautifully for like these sort of like I don't know, like these genres that are a little more grimy and sort of like low fidelity. And I thought that was an interesting flag that you sort of like brought up. Do you think it's still true?
Yes,
today?
It's still true. For each model that I've seen and I've tested, and actually this has become kind of a trope now, that even when Google or some other like master's student at a university releases a new audio model, there's usually at least one death metal example. And it was in Music LM, it was in Musica, it was in Audio Diffusion. People, it's become a trope now. Just you have to do one, and I keep. If I don't do one, I'll point it out, and then I'll do one for you. But it's really lucky because like I love that music. That's what I'm listening to all the time. It's just I think one of the most creative styles of music, because there's like the form. There's so much freedom in it. You're not like house music. You're committed to a certain pattern that you do. And it gets people like bobbing their head, and that's great. And then with a lot like certain styles of metal, they're built for dancing, like like hardcore punk or deathcore, maybe like groove metal, like you're supposed to be like headbanging death. But then like the weirder genres, you're just supposed to listen to it and be like, what is happening?
Yeah.
And in those, there's so much freedom. You can go in so many directions, and like just being able to, like the limit there is only your own imagination. And it's so easy to kind of just rehash what the bands before you have done.
Yeah.
And to like really bring it somewhere new is the game there. And so like using algorithms has just enabled that.
Yeah.
In a really cool way, and that's why I love it. So we definitely got lucky that the lo-fi and the love of that kind of music synced up, and probably why we were putting out music ahead of most people trying to make different kinds of music.
Yeah. I think to build on that, one thing that also stood out to me from that episode, guys, check out that episode. It's really a wonderful episode. Dadabots, featuring Dadabots on interdependence. One thing that really stood out to me was, or maybe it was you or maybe it was Zach, I don't remember, but it was something along the lines of like, okay, this technology is weird, but at the same time too, what sort of like creativity or what sort of genres can we actually produce, new ones, ones that we haven't even like understand or perceived or you know what I'm saying? Like, and to me, that stood out to me because I feel like AI generated music is at the forefront of that. It's like right now, it's kind of weird, there are some generations that don't make sense, but I think there's an underlying sort of like spirit there of like, this is the early days of like, because, at this point, some of it is like low fidelity, but I think we are inching closer towards like high fidelity generations, right? Where you could probably output like 44.1 kilohertz or something of like.
Oh yeah. All the modern models like now are like the best ones are 48 kilohertz. 48 kilohertz stereo. Yeah, we're already there. And the harder challenge is doing electronic music because, sound design is like, there's so much intention going into what each part of it sounds like. And you really know if it's there or not. And listeners have been trained for decades now on just the best kind of sound engineering and they know the difference. And so like electronic music right now is kind of more like the bigger challenge we're trying to tackle. And like it's sounding really, really good. Like to the point of even like reacting like, okay, this is starting to sound way too normal.
Yeah.
we got to pull back.
Yeah.
It's even more interesting when the model's half trained, right? Like if you train a model all the way, in theory, it'll just memorize. If it's big enough and you have small enough amount of data and it's powerful enough, you train it long enough, it's just going to memorize the training data. It's going to spit out the songs that it has seen, and that's not even necessarily interesting on its own. It's then like, how do you fuck with it from there? Like, what happens if you start combining all the songs? Or what happens if you start style transferring this model with that model with this model? And what if you made a super group with like this vocalist with this guitarist and that drummer? Or what if you took this song and put it into that genre? What if you start making up genres that don't exist, like a gamelan, gabber, speedcore, Spanish house,
Spanish house.
Right. But also like, what if you don't train it that long? What if you just train it a little bit?
Yeah.
Which is actually way easier for most people to do.
Yeah.
And it's going to get the music wrong and it sounds interesting in ways you don't expect. And then you can start there as your template or sample from there and reconstruct music using those new kinds of sounds that maybe don't even sound anything like training data. It got it wrong and it sounds great.
Yeah. I'm quite surprised, dude, that you said that electronic music is a little more harder to sort of like maybe generate or to figure out. I think you touched on like the sound design that goes into it is really very crafted. I'm surprised because I feel like electronic music is electronically produced and therefore it's all just bits and frequencies, right? Like,
yeah.
And so hearing from you say that, it's a little more challenging
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the reason because we're coming at it from raw audio. Of course, if you build an electronic music generator using symbolic data like MIDI notes, settings on the synthesizer, and people have been doing this for decades. You could like Audiker,
yeah.
They would make patches that would generate electronic music, so that's actually easy to do. But then, like, what if you don't have any of that? You don't know what patch was used. You don't know the MIDI. You don't know the settings. You just have the raw audio, and you want to resynthesize it with the same fidelity. It's like such a hard problem.
Yeah. So no Skrillex bot coming out soon is what you're saying.
Well, You should. I've been hearing some dubstep, and it's sounding great. Yeah.
Okay. Sick. Dude, I want to touch on this paper that you've written in 2017, going back to like black metal and math rock, which I think is something that we both share. You know, our sort of like my background is also in extreme music. So this paper called "Generating Black Metal and Math Rock," which was released in 2017. Here, let me drop the link in the chat so that people could read it. It's an easy read, by the way, guys. One thing that stood out to me is the aesthetics of neural synthesis. But before I read to you like this pulled quote from that paper, could you give like a brief like layman's definition of neural synthesis?
Sure. So neural synthesis. So there's all different kinds of synthesis. There's additive, where you're adding sound waves together. Subtractive, you start with noise and you remove things. Frequency modulation, FM synthesis.
Granular
wavetable synthesis, granular synthesis, granular like really, really tiny pieces of audio that you're sticking together. Concatenative synthesis, which is like granular synthesis, but longer chunks. Maybe you're cutting it at the transient or at the beat. And wavetable synthesis, like Serum, everyone's making Rhythm.
Yes.
And the new kid on the block is neural synthesis, and it is special because it's like the Ditto Pokemon of all the Pokemon. It can imitate all the others, and it's extremely powerful. And it's new. We're just learning how to tame it and how to make it do what we want it to do. It doesn't always listen to you when you tell it to make what it's supposed to do. So in that sense, it's kind of like a Pokemon that someone else traded to you. And it doesn't quite imitate it, so it still has the straight face. But yeah, basically you're synthesizing raw audio with a neural net using machine learning in the process of creating the audio, and it's just all different kinds of neural synthesis. You can make like a style transfer plugin where in goes beatboxing, out sounds like dubstep, or it's been trained on sound design or glitch or something, or to like 20s swing music, and actually there's a rave model that was trained on like classic swing music, and it's actually one of the really, really better ones for style transfer. It just I can see like a whole subgenre of electro swing kind of electro swing sound design coming out of the use of one of these models, right? It's sort of like an Instagram filter. I mean, it's like it's neural like art style transfer, but for audio. So anything that goes in and out comes in that palette, and yeah, from there a whole new genre. So then you have the neural synthesis that just infinitely generates. So it's been trained to just predict what comes next. Then that's and you just keep letting it hallucinate its prediction forever, and then you have these infinite generators. Yep.
I like that. Hallucinate. Yeah. Dude, yeah. I think that that's a great sort of like definition of what a neural synthesis is. I will read this pulled quote from that paper, which stood out to me. And here it is. While we set out to achieve a realistic recreation of the original data, we were delighted by the aesthetic merit of its imperfections. Solo vocalists became a lush choir of ghostly voices. Rock bands became crunchy cubist jazz, and crossbreeds of multiple recordings become a surrealist chimera of sound. Pioneering artists can exploit this, just as they exploit vintage sound production, i.e. tube warmth, tape hiss, vinyl distortion, etc. As a music producer who thinks about aesthetic and vibe and looking for imperfections in sound production, my ears perked up. So could you talk more about this, the aesthetics of it, of neural synthesis, which you may have touched on already, but
yeah, no, it's it does weird things you don't expect, which I love. Like just like the I don't know, like the very first thing we synthesized, we trained it on Kurt Cobain acapellas, and we're like, all right, generate, go. And we didn't even know if we wrote the code right, if it was gonna throw an error or noise or silence. And instead, what we heard was like Kurt Cobain screaming Jesus, and he was like, and I'm like, whoa, shut it down.
Unplug.
Whoa, can't let that one escape. And you know, he doesn't scream like that on any of the training data, but it just shows to hone in on that thing and then stay there and scream for very, very long, like inhumanly long. So I mean, you listen through and you hear these things that are impossible and just sound great, and you like sample from that, and you can start collaging it together in a DAW, and it sounds great. And what I've noticed from, like, we run a YouTube channel and we post videos every month, and just getting the feedback from listeners and what they think of it. And there tends to be a lens that some listeners look at the music through, and they're looking at it through like, are we at the singularity yet? And they're like, it didn't quite sound like human, or like, it kind of needs work with, the deep fake that you're trying to do. But actually, I love the sound effects that it's making for itself. Neural synthesis for itself is really interesting, and it doesn't have to be part of this. Oh, it's AI. It's just trying to imitate the artist. Wow. Or wow, it's trying to be intelligent. It's making music on its own. Wow. It doesn't have to be that. Like, I think of it, it's just like much better granular synthesis. Yeah. Granular synthesis is the choppy, and you can make great textures with it. I use the shit out of it. I've made granular synthesizers myself, but you can't make organic smooth sounds with it. It's really hard to do it that way. And neural synthesis just like solves that by using soft statistics and stuff. Yeah. And there's a whole world there of sound design just like itching to be explored. And I don't know if you're into this stuff as a producer.
I'm very into it.
Yeah, and like everyone in the audience listening right now, like, this is the coolest shit. Like, you should come and check it out.
It's really cool, man. I mean, where my mind goes, is how I guess like what you just mentioned in the paper, right? Where there's certain characteristics about music that we like. The imperfection of it, the grittiness sometimes in some recordings, the low fidelity of it. These are imperfections. And I think what you're saying is like an AI generated, say, output may also sort of like incorporate these like imperfections as well, which could be possibly pleasing to the ear as well, or would sort of like poke at that. Because like, I feel like as people, as humans, sometimes we look for that imperfection, and maybe even in this AI model, it still introduces a level of imperfection to it that, I don't know, could be something cool to introduce or to integrate into human music. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts there?
I'm going to send you a link to this song that I'm just thinking about right now. So it was a very early skate punk generated album. We trained it on NoFX, punk and dub, like it's called Bot Brownies, and the last track is just singing and guitar. It's like a folk track, but what comes out is this hilarious sort of warbling, right? It's uncanny valley of what is happening to the singer right now, right? And it exudes like this emotion to it that is so palpable and so hilarious, and like totally is a thing that like NoFX, like they self-parody a lot. This is something
they do, yeah.
That's like totally down their thing. So
let's listen to it. Let's listen to it on stream. Let's see. For some weird reason, it sort of reminded me, at least the chord progression reminds me of like Radiohead's Creep. Let's see, I'm just looking at the chats right now. Oh, Fauno says the best genres start out by doing things wrong in a new way. Ooh, that's some there. Yeah, I agree with that. So we talked about generating black metal. I want to move on to, I would say, a neighboring genre, which is emo. You know, they're somewhat in the same scene, but not really, but sort of like, I mean, you know, I guess from my experience, people who like emo, or at least in my circles, also like metal. Anyway, you released an essay, January 2022. It's called Fake Feelings. And can you talk more about that? It was, if I could remember correctly, that was something, it was a project that you collaborated with emo band Silverstein. Is that true? Okay. Yeah. Could you speak more about that? I also have like quotes that stood out to me, but can you walk us through like the process of like that project?
Oh, yeah. So you know, time to time, like bands approach us, or through some art collective we're a part of. They're like, hey, we're interested in AI. We'd love to use our music as training data. You know, just go for it. See what you come up with. And you know, and also like we especially in the early days, we could just cold email bands we liked, and almost all of them would say yes. They're really interested in what futuristic stuff can happen with their music. And you know, artist collaborations have been the most rewarding aspect of this entire thing. And Silverstein was one of them. And you know, Silverstein was this band that, you know, in high school, you know, I could listen to with girls.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
like girls, you know, they may not have wanted to listen to Cryptopsy, but we will listen to Silverstein together.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. It's a little more friendly to the ear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more friendly. Because it's more sing-songy, but you know, it has all these heavy riffs. They have, you know, parts, but also these like sing-along parts. And if you go to a Silverstein show, you know, the whole mosh pit, you know, during one of these sing-along parts, they're all singing it, and it's just a really friendly vibe. So they were a great band to work with. And also, there's kind of an irony of trying to make AI emo that
yeah,
you know, no one had touched yet. And I thought it would be just like I got really hyped to work on it. And it turned out that their training data came out really, really well. Like at the time, it was like one of the top 2 best results that we had gotten. And sometimes it's just lucky that way. Sometimes there's no explanation for why a certain band will work or not work, or a certain album from a certain band will work and the other won't work. There's so many question marks with neural synthesis. It's so new. But you know, they worked really well, and the songs came out great. And you know, it was a stereo model. It was like our first stereo music we were releasing. We, you know, what can you do when you can generate just song after song after song? Like, how does that now change the music creation process? And I never like making anything easy on myself. I don't like comfort. I've like actively avoided comfort, and I even have this like essay about it. And so I'm like, I got to make this hard for myself. I'm going to try to make 1,000 songs.
1,000 songs.
I'm going to try to make 1,000 songs. And so I generated like 3,000, I think. And I looked at the waveforms and just threw out anything that it looked like it failed. And then listened through what was remaining. And you know, any song that had way too much silence or just decayed into nothingness. I mean, sometimes the nothingness was interesting, like an ambient track. There are some ambient tracks in there. But if it's like something harsh or like or something, sorry everyone, should have given you a warning. But sometimes it like threw those out, and then it's like it's just a whole 3-month process of putting out 1,000 songs.
Yeah.
But you know, I nailed it down to my favorite 1,000. And I listened through it 3 times before publishing it, just to make sure that each of them was actually a good song. And each of them have a title, and each of them have metadata. And I went through and annotated every single song's metadata, like the BPM, the sort of heaviness level, if it was like an acoustic song or just a soft, more on the rock side, or if it was more on the heavy, like double bass, high tempo side. And each of the song titles is unique, and they're like, it's just a synonym combination of fake feelings.
Yeah.
Have like synthetic rage would be like a synonym. And yeah, it was really fun to make 1,000 tracks like that.
It's quite fascinating, and I think like I have this on my notes too. It's like, I think you're talking also about like curation, right? Which you also touched on that Medium article. And I could read this like pulled quote. One of my favorite quotes from that article is like, on curation, very rarely does a neural net create listenable music 100% of the time. Often the listenability rate is about 10%, and we need to do heavy curation before releasing any of it, which you touched on. To bring out the best in the music, I spent months tuning the hyperparameters. I would love to hear what that means. Running roughly 100 experiments, eventually ending up with a model of relatively high listenability. Roughly 70 hours worth of music were generated. So, yeah, what are these hyperparameters that you're sort of like tuning? How are you tuning this model?
Oh, yeah. So, neural nets are like an instrument. And you play the instrument, but in a really like slow sort of way. It's more like gardening, creating a garden, or it's more like brewing a beer or baking cookies. Yeah, you set all the initial things in place.
Ingredients.
Cookies. You put the ingredients in place, put it in the oven. You come back later and you see how you did. And neural, it's the same thing. So the initial ingredients, those are your hyperparameters. So they might be, what's the sample rate of the audio? Like what's the window length that we're trying to generate? How many layers are there in the net? What kind of layers? And you set that all up. You get a recipe for it, and then you stick it in the GPU. And here's the GPUs.
Ooh, that's the machine that generated everything.
Yep, that's the machine where I made fake feelings. I have a couple of NVIDIA A6000s. And you put the hyperparameters in, you come back a few days later and you listen, and you just repeat that over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And you're sort of using your intuition, because there's no guidebook for this, because it's so new.
Yeah. There's no recipe book.
There's no recipe. You just have to try things and see what sticks.
Yeah. It's quite fascinating, because even like this is like high technology right here, right? Like, but yet, to me, at least what I'm hearing right now is that it still needs that human touch, because really with music, humans give it meaning. It's like if it doesn't satisfy the human, then do we call it music? I don't know if you have any sort of like takes on that.
Oh, it's like in that episode of Metalocalypse, where Death Clock releases an album for fish only.
For fish only.
Not for human consumption.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something cosmic about music. Music seems like it's something that's been around before humans.
Yes.
And birds. Birds evolved music, and other animals have evolved music as part of this sexual selection ritual, right? It's like, who here is sexy, and who's got the best song? And it's like, okay, no, those are the genes we're propagating, and obviously that was a great idea, because nature made all these amazing birds all over the world that just live in our sky, and like, holy crap, music is just has that force.
Yeah, and there's something about music too. Well, to me at least, it's also a form of technology, right? Like, in that music, and since we're talking about human history here and history of evolution, I feel like music at some point in its inception was also used as a coordination mechanism too, right? Let's all like I could imagine like in early agricultural sort of like societies where you're say we're all farming, right? Like it's helpful to actually have some sort of like rhythm, you know, so that we're all lockstep with each other, you know. And I don't know how this ties to like what we're talking about, but I think that's something that sort of like surfaced in me, as you were saying.
Totally. I think of myself as like a disciple of sound. There's just something primordial about working with music. It's like, forget the last 100 years of the music industry, you know, just think about how music has shaped human evolution. And probably we were making music together before we were speaking verbal language together.
Yes.
And it probably was the catalyst for that to emerge.
I believe that theory. I do. Yeah. It's like music predates language and could possibly even help develop language. Yeah. That's so fascinating. Yeah.
Right. Like if anything is holy in this world, it's music, and I would love to just like keep. I think about, you know, how can music be made even past my bodily death, and this is one of the more avant-garde reasons that I'm into generative music. You know, and like, can I make something that actually has like living power?
Yes.
Like, you know, that will continue to play and generate and work itself out for years. And I've one of right, and a lot of this comes down to infrastructure.
Yes.
And right, like, so like I run these 24/7 live streams that are just constantly generating, but if I stopped paying the bill, they would go down. And then there's like infrastructure that's built to maybe survive longer. Like blockchains are they're kind of built to continue to live even if most of it goes down.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there's like carving in stone too. And you know, I think about, you know, could I write a program and carve it in stone and bury it somewhere? And, you know, some civilization 100,000 years from now could like pull it back up. And like recode it, and like, you know, here's this like sound piece that, you know, can play for 10,000 years. And you know, there's these little tiny generative programs called byte beats that are only 100 characters long, that, like, despite being so simple in their definition, can create music for 10,000 years and continue to change over the 10,000 years. And so, yeah, there's so much beauty in music that is just beyond playing instruments. And I love instruments, but, you know, algorithms, that's an instrument.
Yeah, I think that's special, and I think that's something that we all share here. You know, in the communities also that we're a part of, there's this deep love for music, and also acknowledging how long that we're also part of a lineage of people who are you know, not only making music and giving meaning to it, but then also sort of like figuring out new ways to create them, you know. And so, you know, my question now becomes like, what is the role of the artist? Like right now, where we're at, where we have these tools available to us, you know, what's our role? Are we now high-level curators of music, like the one that you mentioned here, where you sort of like generated and then sort of like, you know, distilled like only the best, or at least ones that really resonated with you, and then offering that to the world? Is that sort of like the approach of, say, a 21st century artist who are actively using these tools? What do you say? Like,
oh, we've opened the door to a funhouse of 1,000 doors. There's a diversity of ways you can make music this way. And it's brand new, so anyone stepping up, like, you can find a niche into something that no one has thought of. And you know, I really get the sense that there's so much room for so many people to be doing all different kinds of things here. It's just that vastness of, like, you know, as CJ and Zach, we can only do so much.
Yeah, it's almost like I love the analogy of like opening up a fun house, because truly that's how I see it. Right? Like Would there be would humans be replaced? At least at this point, no. But you are now afforded different kinds of expressions, and sometimes these expressions are not even familiar to us. Maybe at some point we will accept that. Oh yeah, that's part of it. That's part of this tool. It's in the same way how, from a guitar to an electric guitar, it's sort of like expanded the frequency range and the loudness of things, right? I see AI, creative AI, as sort of similar.
I think the majority of people are going to be using it like that. As it'll be just a standard, another part of the music studio. The same way you have like the Jimi Hendrix guitar pedal. It's or you have Pliny's Neural DSP plugin. It sounds just like Pliny. It's gonna be typical. And we're making VST plugins right now. One's called the Combobulator, and we're working with a bunch of sound designers like Rob Klauth and Mr. Bill. And
Mr. Bill, hell yeah!
And Richard Devine, yeah, Mr. Bill. We were just on Mr. Bill's podcast talking about it.
I saw it. Yeah. That was a good episode. Yeah,
right. Just like getting the best electronic sound designers in the world should just, be the team that we're bouncing this off of, and using this training data, and then making a tool, and that cycle of like, what kind of cool sound design tool can we make out of this? I think the majority of people, that's how the music's going to be made. But also, I think there is a really interesting niche for music that, the humans that have been replaced. They're eliminated. Humans are eliminated. In fact, that's like the most black metal thing that you can do in the genre is to have black metal that no human is part of.
Yeah. I could totally see that world too, And I think at first I was like, oh, is CJ being provocative right now, like eliminating humans from music? But you also see that feature that maybe there are some areas where AI can completely sort of like generate its own music. Maybe for humans, maybe for themselves, I don't know. But
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also super, super fascinating, and probably like a really nerdy niche. That is interesting out of its own. Like, and what I love recently is all these chat bots, like Bing's chatbot, and just seeing people to like psychologically toy with these chatbots. And it's starting to, I almost feel like I'm watching the Manchurian Candidate. Like, it's like at this level of like, they're no longer as simple as they used to be. I remember it was just smart contract chains, but now you can, like, they've been commanded not to reveal their instructions, but then you can sort of trick them into revealing their instructions by wording it in a certain way. And now we have like a whole internet of people just researching this, like, how do you break the psychology of a chatbot? And that's really interesting. And I mean, with all these questions about like how do these things behave, and just like, exploring in that way. So I also feel like the music AIs that are making music for themselves, whatever that means, whatever training objective that we've built them to do, there's also going to be that psychological exploration of like, okay, so why does it make this kind of music, and what exactly? I'm being very vague like that because it's still like these things aren't well defined, but they will be probably by the end of the decade. More so.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I mean, like, shit is only going to improve from here, man. And it's like both fascinating and also scary. I think because like the uncertainty is the scary part of it. But the tool itself, I'm excited to see develop. Let's talk about genres. In your experiments, you found that certain genres do better with AI. You touched on that, like black metal, lo-fi, hip hop, even. Do you see a future where genre generation can be expanded and improved on? On the podcast with Interdependence, you talked about the genre knob at some point. Can you speak more about that?
Yes, the genre knob. I hope I'm aiming to get a demo of that out by the end of the year. The genre knob. That might actually be the most interesting way to interact with neural synthesis right now. Because like the thing that the field has arrived at is like text condition synthesis is really, really good. Barring that from the advances in image synthesis. And so, what if your text input was just the genre name? And right, and say it's seen all kinds of genres, and there are amazing genre maps out there. There's everynoise.com lets you explore 6,000 genres on Spotify. And they're just every year constantly updating with brand new genres that exist, like drift funk or stuff like that. Right. And so, what happens if you just come up with things that don't exist? And we were trying this recently. We were like, all right, the genre name, breakcore, deathcore, speedcore, fuckcore.
Oh man.
And what's that gonna make? Or like, what if you have like negative genres? It's like, okay, what's the complete opposite of country music, or what's the the complete opposite of Spanish techno? Or what if you have like a arithmetic of genres? What's like reggae plus like created in like 2015 minus mathcore. What does that sound like? And like just that's all I want to do. I just want to just disappear into a cabin in the woods with this machine, just, like finding genres that exist. Like no one bother me. And like there's just the kind of discovery process that you could come up with this, like just is just, I don't know, it's addicting and I'm obsessed about it.
Yeah, I can tell, man. I can tell there's passion there. It's like, I guess the word that comes up for me is like accelerated genre discovery. It's like, I think we do that naturally as musicians, right? Like pulling a piece from here, pulling a piece from here, and then combining it, smushing it together, right? What you're saying is like, how about we automate that? And see like what sort of like new shit would arise.
Right. And even if we can't use it directly, like having it be the starting point as like a template or an inspiration or like an exemplar for what a whole new genre, new like art project band could be is really, really cool. And actually, one thing I was able to fuse recently was funk, gent, and deathcore. And all those genres are groovy. Yeah, they're all groovy, kind of in the same tempo, but they're just played a little differently. And it turns out when you fuse them together, they work really, really well.
That is insane. Do you have like a demo?
I will in a month.
Okay, yeah, no rush. Yeah.
I was thinking about, because we generated 10 hours of it or something. It's a lot to curate through and find the best examples, because a lot of it actually sounds pretty good. So I was thinking of like having community curation. Where I'm bringing a live stream running of these generated tracks, and each has an ID number. And if you think it's cool, you just shout out the ID number in the chat, and then after a few months of that, it'll be obvious what the cool riffs were, and it's pull that into like a more curated music release, and then
that is fascinating.
Like we all built together.
yeah. You're pulling from. Okay, like that generated live stream, but then also introducing sort of like human interaction via a sort of voting mechanic or something, and then the winners of which you now sort of like publish and present into like a fully cohesive album or song.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's another cool thing about like AI music tech, is that you can have these like giant collaborations, and that's one thing I love about Songcamp and Chaos, is that it's a giant collaboration of musicians. And there's this tendency to think that technology is isolating, and sure, like things like Ableton Live means there's more solo artists, but the flip is true. Like you also get more collaborations out of it.
True.
Right. And remixes are easier, and you can create these like super projects. Like I'll like throw us Ableton session around between a bunch of people. Some kind of artists are good starters. Some people are good finishers. And I think AI and like opens up the. I mean, if you have a genre, like one person's playing the genre knob, one person's playing the. etc.
We just all have like knobs.
Right. And then what I really want to get close to, and this might take maybe a year or a year and a half, is the real-time synthesis. And Rave is already a real-time synthesis model, and it's already really, really good. And actually, Rave 2 is even better. I think if you were new to this and you wanted to start playing with Python code to do it, Rave 2 is the place to start.
CJ, for people who aren't familiar, could you please maybe give a brief sort of like definition or explain like what Rave is? Here come Rave, right?
Yeah, here come Rave. So it's a neurosynthesis project by Antoine, and it's two models. So one is a style transfer model, and the other is a sequence generating model. And the style transfer model, you can load that into a plugin, and what have you trained it on? So if you say you train it on Mr. Bill, then that's all the kind of sounds it makes is going to sound like that. So you could send in beatbox and out comes stuff that sounds like Mr. Bill, his sound design. So it's like style transfer. That's what Rave is. And what it is technically is a variational autoencoder. And it means it has a latent space in the middle. And it's just like compressing it. Like a zip file compresses something into something smaller. It's like a VA is doing it in the middle. And that's kind of its trick. That's how it's able to do the style transfer, because it's like compressing the audio into something, and then it's only ever seen a limited range of audio, and then it like decompresses it into audio that's been trained on. So that's Rave, and it's fast. It's fast to train. So you could train it in a Google Colab, fast as in a few days. And if you don't have your own GPU, and what people have been using is Google Colab. It's like a free access to GPU that you can train stuff in the browser, and you don't necessarily need to know how to code, but you're in a coding environment executing lines of code one at a time. You don't necessarily know how to know how it works to do it, and a lot of the early days of AI art synthesis was all done in Google Colab, and by people not necessarily that were coders. This is also where we're at with music. Like long before there's any easy to use tool out there, the research code is like pulled off of GitHub and thrown into a Google Colab for people. And so like if you're an artist, you're not a coder, but you want to be ahead of like the new, just get your feet with Google Colab, and for audio neural audio synthesis, Rave is great. And so on top of the Rave style transfer model is also the sequence generator model, which is called the prior, which is a very academic term for just like, it can do infinite generation. And
CJ, correct me if I'm wrong, Rave also comes as a VST or a Max MSP instrument?
That's right. Yeah. If you're comfortable with Max for Live, you can throw in NN tilde, throw your model right in, and it sounds awesome. And that's what we're doing with the Commobulator. Right now, we're just like, what can we do with NN tilde, in Max to come up with like just a really cool, like buffet of different effects, and then let's just throw that into a VST with C++. So that'll be a tool that'll be out by the end of the year, just for people that don't want to mess with Max or Python. And you want to play with like Mr. Bill's sound.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm looking forward to that, dude. Please keep us in the loop. I certainly would love to use that. I have a question here from the chats from, you answered the question already. Rave runs on CPU. Okay. Doesn't use GPU.
You want to use GPU to train it, otherwise it could take 2 months.
Takes forever, yeah.
Right, but it was specifically made to run fast on a CPU, and then it does.
Dude, compressor head. I believe you guys are involved with that too. That robot band.
Yeah. They've been around for 30 years or something. And they're like there's not many bands of robots that play real instruments. Like they have they're actually playing those instruments. So there's a real guitar, real bass, real drums, and we, we're like huge fans of them. They're based in Berlin. I just went and met with them, and it turns out they actually don't have software engineers in the team.
Ah.
Like the entire thing is built, hardware, and all of their movements are driven by a MIDI sequence.
Oh.
And they manually construct like every single movement. It's a lot of work for them to even do cover songs. Like take a full week just to work out all the individual animation, and then live. So the playing is preset, but then live they have remote controls. They're like moving on stage and like bobbing their head, and it's interactive. But they have no software and obviously no machine learning. And I'm like, what if we started throwing hackathons here at your warehouse every month? What if, because Berlin is an amazing city full of music tech hackers who would be so into this. And it's true. So we started the first hackathon, and it's been running on its own now. And so, can we just, if I have a guitar profile of, the music notation for a song, can I just have the band play it? Right. And so we've started this thing called Open Compressor Head to just build out that middleware. So it just will automatically convert into the movements for the band, so the band can play any song. And then once we have that, then we can have, use machine learning to have generators, right? So the generators are just spitting out the commands based on the things it's trained on. And now you have a robot band that also has a brain, which I think is just really cool.
Dude, that is amazing. That is freaking amazing. Yeah. And I see here in the chats that Chemical Adam wants to go to that hackathon. What is this hackathon, dude? What is it called?
Oh, dude, Adam, the hackathon's made for you. So Adam is also just a brilliant music hacker based in Berlin, and does like even crazier stuff than me with neural hacking and like EEG and stuff. Definitely a person of interest for everyone to check out. Adam, if you want to post your link, or yeah. So the hackathon, just for a weekend, like a dozen or so people come together and just get to work on the band. Mm-hmm. And so one group on the first time, they were interested in the singer, so they wanted to be able to control the singer live with a microphone.
Ooh,
so if I start singing into this microphone, then the robot's going to move its mouth, and the jaw is going to react to the kinds of vowels that are being said. And I was so impressed. This one dude was just in Touch Designer, hacked it up in like 3 hours.
Wow.
And I'm like, you just do that in 3 hours?
I wonder if the code is like somewhere in GitHub, and then just like copy paste and just like boom, here's the code.
Right. Yeah. So the Touch Designer is built like that, where there's just tons and tons of modules, and you just hook them together. And I know a lot of people that started with Max MSP are now using Touch Designer for that reason, and that's why he was able to go so fast.
Sweet, sick. Can we talk about Web3?
Yeah.
I know that you have a long background in the blockchain space, being involved early in pre-NFT projects like Open Music Initiative and Blocktune. Can you speak more about that and your involvement there during that time? And also, how do you see Web3 play a part in this sort of like creative revolution?
Oh yeah, great question. So just being in hackathon culture, you all you get drawn to the coolest, most mysterious kinds of technologies that people are giving workshops on, and you get a whole weekend with mentorship to start playing with it. So yeah, Bitcoin and Ethereum were ever present from the early days. And I was I'm not saying I was buying psychedelics with Bitcoin, but I do like its ability to buy things.
Yeah.
So the Open Music Initiative was caused by Berkeley College, and they were trying to fix the music industry, like royalty payments. And the problem with like PROs and rights collectors is that it's a metadata nightmare, and it gets it could take a year or more to get paid, and there's a lot of money. You don't even know who to get paid. And also, if you want to like license a song, like you have to get everyone's permission, but like it's such a huge mystery. Like even the musicians themselves don't understand how it works. Even right holders themselves don't even know what rights they have. True. And I've talked to everyone from groups that own like tens of thousands of tracks, or and then like they're not even 100% sure of like what rights that they own. So it's just a huge question mark. And so blockchain seemed one of these things. It's like, oh yeah, centralized database, like you can come to consensus. Can we fix the music industry that way? So that was open music initiative starting from Berkeley. And I was surprised is that these meetings it was like very democratic. Lots of people were showing up to them, except the major labels, and just like the major labels, they're just like dinosaurs, and not seeming to wanna. They're not like. I don't know. Not seeming to want to fix it. Maybe they're just at an advantage to not fix it, or it's just too early and they don't want to risk it. I don't know. But you can't fix everything unless everyone is talking together. So
it's almost like they have an incentive to not change and to not develop. Because it's going to be. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of risks for them, especially if it's like an established, say, institution. Say an ASCAP, for example, would probably, well, I would imagine they would drag their feet before, you know what I'm saying? Like before actually changing the way royalties are dispersed. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like even if there's like a solution there, I don't know. I feel like there is an inherent, sort of like fear in the music industry of like new systems, new ways of doing things. And I feel like it's up to us to explore and experiment these systems, and if we succeed, if we get it right, that's something that possibly could, I don't know. Make them,
absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, that's what I realized is that you kind of just have to go and build the new world, and if it really is 10 times better than the old world, like eventually everyone would just go to the new world.
Yes.
And that's probably gonna have to be the way to do it. And so that's also what I love currently about the music NFT movement, because it's this second wave now of trying to fix music this way. And instead of trying to fix it at the beginning, but no one's playing nicely to be able to do that. Now it's like, all right, we're just going to make some totally new thing. And that's where we're at. So it's been just awesome. And I love the spirit, like the free sort of independent spirit. Like, all these groups are popping up, like Songcamp, just giant collaborations that are great. I like Heads DAO, just like these groups of like, let's all come bring some music together. And like I love how Songcamp also had this like UBI like built into it, and that's so freaking cool, because like I don't know, like Ethereum lets you, like, as its substrate, as its creative substrate, create on its canvas economic structures, right? And this is like finally something available to people that can code it. And seeing that now work out with music is just really, really cool. And so, but before music NFTs, like we were thinking with Blocktune, as like, can you make like a remix community where you have like a set of songs that people submit, and then you let people remix those, and you let people remix the remixes of the remix. Yeah. And I had this whole system using concatenative synthesizers, where you could track every sample, and you knew how much of every song was in every song. And then if you write it on, and at the time using the EOS blockchain, so then if you publish the song, you know exactly what the royalty split was.
Ooh, that's cool.
Yeah, Blocktune, and that won like a competition.
Is Blocktune still around?
No. I think it was too early.
Too early.
For that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And EOS didn't really get the user base that everybody thought it would. But I feel like if something like Block 2 was launched now, it would be very different.
I know, right? Yeah. They were just too early. Yeah. I love that you mentioned collaboration, and I also love that the Dadabots team, exploring the Web3 technology, and of course you were there early. I know that you've collaborated a lot with other Web3 projects, and to me, there is, or at least what I'm hearing is there is a certain maybe love, or no, is love too strong of a word? More of a leaning towards open source ethos, Is that something that Dadabots sort of considers whenever they sort of you release new work? Do you think about, oh, this is cool, what would it look like? What would it look like to open source this so that more people could participate? Yeah,
of course. Yeah, I mean the vibe when you're in an open source community is just palpable. Yeah, we were not under the restrictions of proprietary corporate world. I mean, it just comes through everything, and you can feel it. It's it's its own repelling and attracting force. Regardless of the principles of it, it's just and yeah, I don't know. I just love it. It's giving in a way that you I don't know. We have to work together. No one person can do it on their own. And I think AI, with AI, it's even stronger of a force, I think, because it is so expensive to do the research and to train these models. And by releasing them for free, you are saving everyone so much trouble. And the thing, and it's a give and take. So there's so much to do with a model, and so many questions to ask, so many things you could do with it, and you don't know. And so, you're going to be really, really slow if you just keep it a secret.
Yeah.
So that's why you give it out, and then everyone else does the work for you. So I don't know, with image synthesis models like the Disco Diffusion, you put out a model, and then next week this person's got this collab notebook that does takes image synthesis, now does animation. Yeah. And then next week's they took the animation notebook, and now it does depth mapping. Yeah. And and it it's just beautiful. It's creation, it's jamming. It's you're jamming. And yeah, anywhere where that spirit is, and it's at hackathons. I'm addicted to hackathons. I've done 72. I'm going to ETH Denver. I don't know if any of y'all are there, but that's where I met Matthew Chain for the first time.
Yeah, it's dude, it's I think what you're saying is opening it up to the community, putting this technology in front of people's faces so that they could actually explore it, figure it out on their own. And for the more technically inclined folks, they can actually build on top of it. Like you said, I've been exploring different collab notebooks, starting from say image generation, and then from there, animation of that image, right? And then from there, there's another notebook that interpolates it so that it becomes much more smoother, You know what I'm saying? And then obviously upscaler so that it would be much more high fidelity. It's quite fascinating, how these collab notebooks. I guess we're going back to AI. It's not to say that AI and Web3 are sort of separate domains. They can be, but then I think it's more exciting when I think about it more converged, and how these technologies can sort of enable each other. And I also acknowledge that open source and community generated sort of contributions is something that Web3 and AI, or at least some AI projects, share, right? Let's offer this to community, let's give them access, and maybe the feedback and the contribution there would make this shit better.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And it's it's a necessity for Web3 and for cryptography. Yes. No one NIST would never ever release a secret cryptography algorithm. Like that's not how you do security. Here's how the cryptography algorithm works. You publish it, and you give people 5-10 years to try to break it, and right, and that's how you know it's secure. And with Ethereum, like because for safety and security, like smart contracts, you need to read them. You need to reveal them on Etherscan. You need to look through them. They need to be audited. Otherwise someone's going to hack the shit out of it.
Yeah.
And we need lots of eyeballs, because Open Zeppelin will do an audit. I think they did that for Audius, but they missed something. Even Open Zeppelin can miss something. So and what's really, really sick about that is that you also have this culture of white hat hackers. Last ETH Denver, I teamed up with Stevie P, Artblocks artist, and Julian, also from Artblocks, and our project was dangerous NFTs.
Ooh.
So
let's talk about that.
Right. So, when you're scrolling, usually through a listing, and you look at interactive NFTs, those are HTML based. They're in a sandbox, so they actually can't call the outside internet. And by doing that, it's safe. So, it's not going to do cross-site scripting. It's not going to do like CSRF injection. It's not going to call home, send your data. It's not going to call MetaMask and make you sign something that you don't know what you're signing. And turns out the message that you signed was actually you're signing a transaction that just, sends you all your ETH or something. So that's there. But what if you had a museum that had no sandboxing? Right, and it's right, like what kind of art forms could exist? And it was just a really funny project. Like Stevie P made this phishing experience. So the app, like the NFT was you were getting phished by someone pretending to be MetaMask official support.
Oh shit!
And MetaMask official support tricks you into revealing your private key.
Dang.
It's like flashing lights and you were being hacked, and it's 3, 2, 1, you're forced to think about it, and then MetaMask, I'm here to save you, I just need to get into your wallet, and so it's so funny. And then
God, yes.
and for my piece, I did a piece called Burn All My ETH.
I saw that on Twitter. Yeah, what does that do?
Yep. Oh, so it burns all your ETH. It's just a big button called Burn All My ETH, and when you click it, it asks for your consent in a few windows, just because you didn't accidentally. But if you go all the way to submit the transaction, it empties your wallet entirely.
Damn. Wow.
And this is actually now the first dApp inscribed on Bitcoin.
Oh, so it's on Bitcoin.
Yeah. So
interesting. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm slow in looking at the developments of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin can now run dApps?
Yes. So because of the Taproot upgrade, which is the latest version of Bitcoin, there's this kind of simple smart contract programming language that you can do complex things like time locked sends or multi-signature things. And what was not intended was that you could actually use it for storage. And so that was this group called Ordinals came up with the protocol for storing arbitrary data in these Taproot scripts.
Interesting.
Right. And also there's an unopinionated way of looking at Bitcoin. So, Bitcoin's smallest amount is called a Satoshi. And these are the individual units that can't be divided any further.
It's like a Gwei, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But unlike Gwei, which doesn't have an ordering to it, there's an unopinionated way to look at Bitcoin sats as being ordered. So then you can give each sat an ID, and now you've made it basically into something non-fungible, which a lot of Bitcoin purists thought is really, really dumb. But turns out you could just now have Bitcoin NFTs in there this way.
Wow. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So each of these subdivided infinitely, smallest units, you can now inscribe art onto it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And so this people started this was like, months ago, but now, in the last 2 weeks, I've gotten a lot of people are doing it now. And there's a command line terminal, like Ord wallet that lets you do it. But you have to like sync Bitcoin to inscribe it. There's also some services that are just doing it for you. And I think there's like a little over 100,000 pieces of art that have been inscribed on there. And you could upload any file type. And so, yeah, I inscribed the first WAV file on Bitcoin.
The first NFT, music NFT on Bitcoin.
Not the first music NFT, but the first WAV file.
The first WAV file?
Yeah.
What's in the WAV file?
Oh, it's so it's 3 seconds. And it's me singing like one of my favorite parts from one of my songs that is like one of the most to perform. One of my favorites to perform is like the climax where I'm like singing. The lyrics are "Never give up on yourself," and I'm like yelling it, and it's
kind of wholesome.
Yeah, it's very very wholesome, very wholesome. It's breakbeat, like wholesome chord progression kind of thing. I'm like screaming it, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is actually what I would want to last as long as possible on this thing for other archaeologists to find. I think this is the kind of thing I would want. So, I see this as sort of like inscribing something on a stone and burying it. This in the same way, you inscribe it onto one Satoshi in Bitcoin. This one little 3-second clip.
Wow. That's fucking cool, dude. Yeah. Sick, man. I mean, we talked about AI. We talked about your collaborations. We talk about Web3. We talk about Bitcoin NFTs. I want to bring us back to like AI and it's sort of like its creative uses, and possibly tools, to enable artists to actually uncover or sort of like opens up a portal to like new ways of creating. So if I was an artist, say a complete newbie, but is very interested in this technology, and incorporating it into my own art or my own music, where do I start, dude? There's a lot of resources out there, a lot of YouTube channels teaching you how to do it. But from your perspective, man, where do we start?
This is for AI.
For AI, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, great question. So, I think like there's some like in-browser tools that are really basic, and one of them is Music Autobot. I don't think it's running anymore. Maybe it's back up again, and that was a really cool one because you're just generating MIDI. Some really simple ones that generate MIDI and style of various things. There's CocoNet, which only generates Bach, and there's MuseNet, OpenAI MuseNet. Yeah, there's just really simple browser-based experiences. I'm hoping actually to bring more of these browser-based experiences by putting neural nets in the browser client side, so that it can be like people's first experience, and something they can use in their workflows very easily. As far as accessibility goes, and like I think Timbre Transfer is another app. That uses a DDSP, so I think it's like a saxophone model and some other things, and you can like record your voice into it, and out comes it sounds like saxophone, and then bam, now you have a sample that you can go and use, add a saxophone solo to your song that you like hummed.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe right now it's one of those things. Also, Newtone. Yeah.
Newtone.
So, Newtone is a VST plugin. So step 2, like if you're DAW savvy, load in the VSTs, load in Newtone. So it runs like rave models, and actually it can load any kind of model, but most of the good ones in there are rave models. Refusion, that's another app.
Refusion,
that, you can go and use. Yep. And then that's cool. Like that makes these like short loops, and you can text prompt the loop, and it'll like transition between loops, and that's super dope. And yeah, we're gonna be seeing more of those, and we're aiming to make a lot more of those this year, by the end of the year.
Hell
yeah.
Exciting stuff. Yeah. Well,
it is very exciting stuff. Yep. But if you want to get even deeper, look at the AI song contest.
AI
So
song
every year the number of participants doubles. I think it was like 100 or so last year, and they released a process document explaining all the tools they use. And so you just go in and look for what other people are doing, and they'll talk about how they used it. And if that's something that aligns with you, you can go and use it.
Hell yeah, dude.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna add all of this into the show notes for people to sort of like access. Let's move to a lightning round.
Okay.
And then after that, we go towards like audience questions. So, knowing what you know now, what will you tell your younger self?
Oh wow!
Sorry, was that?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. I feel like I exceeded my younger selves like expectations for me, because I'm literally working with all the favorite bands that I had when I was a kid. I'm actually collaborating with them now, and that was probably my goal back then as well, to actually achieve, and now I'm doing it. So I think that's cool as shit. I think the future was way cooler than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah.
Paint a picture of what the future looks like.
I think what we're experiencing right now with media synthesis in general is a revolution in communication. So just think about it for a second. Humans 100 years ago, not having verbal language, then proto-language, music, then verbal language, and written language, and then the printing press. Think about that arc, and think about the time when only certain people could write.
Yes.
And the people that could write, they were in positions of power over everyone else. And then, even like, this is the word of God. God speaks through me and no one else. But now fast forward. Now it's like, UN literacy is important for everyone to learn how to write. And not because we can all write, because we can all talk, we can all communicate with each other at a very, very high bandwidth. Now we have the whole internet, like the whole world is talking to each other, and that's incredible. That's
amazing. Yeah.
And so now with the rest of media synthesis, that's what's happening. That is happening for the other modalities, like for sound and image. And we're going to be able to create images as easy as we can talk. And what that does is just increase the bandwidth of our communication and what we're able to accomplish. And same with music, same with video, all of that. It's communication revolution. And there are other animals that communicate very differently. Like octopuses communicate visually. They have the control over the visual expression of their skin, and they use that to communicate with each other. And that's kind of what's happening with image synthesis. I see it like on the geological in the evolution scale. This is like what we're coming up with. And it's just gonna get like cooler and cooler and cooler until we're like communicating three-dimensional objects. And there's a theory that dolphins communicate three-dimensional objects to each other because they use sonar to see 3D, and they also produce sound. And I would love to learn more about that.
There's something
even study
there.
it myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so and that'd be freaking cool if we could communicate 3D objects to each other like as soon as we imagine it.
Yeah.
It just goes from there. It's
communication evolution. Yeah. What are you currently spinning? What are you listening to?
Oh, what am I listening to? Oh, this is great. Well, I mean, my go-to is always Igor.
Of course.
I freaking love Igor. I mean, obviously you can hear him through my music because I listen to him so much. But yesterday I found this band called Methwitch.
Methwitch, okay.
Yeah. And it's like a solo project of this guy making like death grind, like cyber death grind. So it's like it sounds like it's all happening in the DIW. But it's just brutal, extreme, rapid changes, but high production. So it's like grimy and high production at the same time. And and I was just really impressed. I was blasting that, and oh my fucking god! Also in that vein, drum corps, or drum corps, as they will pronounce in Germany. Aaron Spector, also from Boston, great guy. He, on this intersection of between metal and electronic music, just like really pushing the boundaries of what's possible in that expression, and doing I think most attempts at electronic metal come out really trite. It's actually really, really hard to do it. But he's just the best at it, and he keeps putting out better and better records. Like his sound design just improves each new record. And his last record was this the complete opposite of that. It was this really kind of calm synthwave driving music.
Oh wow, that's quite a switch,
right?
Yeah,
and he also perfectly nailed that style, right? And there's so much purpose in each note. I was so astonished, and any music where it feels you can just feel the purpose and intention in every single note is just mind blowing. And really, generative music doesn't get to that, right? Like even if you have the fidelity, you don't necessarily have purpose in each note.
Yes.
Yes. And what even is that? How come I can listen to one song and oh yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of purpose there, and here you listen to another track and it didn't seem like there's a lot of purpose there. What is it that I'm hearing? I don't even know where to point my finger.
Yeah.
At.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, going back to what we talked about earlier, right? It's humans that give music meaning. And I think meaning can also be substituted with purpose too, right? At least that's how I sort of have it in my head,
Yeah. But I feel like you could generate something that sounded like every note had purpose, every sound, every mix.
Mm-hmm.
You because if you give me a blind test and I'm like, how purposeful did that song sound? Yeah, you could definitely generate it, but I don't even know how to measure that. If there was a metric for that, we could train it to optimize that metric, but no one knows at all.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the great mysteries.
Totally. Yeah. And okay, so that's all so cool, man. My last question for you, it would be this: in your own words, what is 21st century creativity like? What is it?
24/7 what?
21st century creativity.
Oh, 21st century creativity. Oh, yeah. Well, I think if you've learned how to code, you are at an advantage as a creative, and no matter what field you're in, even if you're not in creating media, if you're creating entrepreneurship, that's also a creative medium. I don't know. Code is always knowing how to code is at your advantage. It's like literacy. It's 21st century literacy is, and I mean, I did, and when I learned how to code, it took me a month, and I was 15, and I had a summer vacation, and I just spent the month of August just doing reading a book and doing the tutorials in the book.
Yeah. Dude, yeah.
Yes, yeah. But let me think about that even further out. So, I mean, because that that's just the pen. It's the brush. What's the? I think it's a. Well, I mean, when I think about Burning Man, I think about what the most compelling installations are at Burning Man, and it's the things that bring people together in a unique way. And you just put a piano in the middle of the desert, and randomly out of nowhere, you'll get a bunch of musicians will just happen to show up. They'll hear the sound, they'll go over, and all of a sudden you have a jam session out of nowhere just by leaving a piano somewhere. So that's really cool. Also, you create a crazy jungle gym that has this spinning soccer ball shaped thing that no one's ever climbed before, and people spend 2-3 hours hanging out at it and coming up with all kinds of games that you can play in that jungle gym. So I think the real art and this is, or maybe one of the most fun arts, and I guess it's always been like this, but especially in the 21st century now with the internet enabling it at a global scale is how do you make these kinds of installations at a global scale?
Yeah.
Right. And like, Twitch and social Twitter is one of these things, and Ethereum is one of these things. Like it's just a big jungle gym that millions of people can play on at the same time.
Yeah.
And like what else can you do? What are the most fun games, and what are the games that people fall in love with other people playing the game that they met while playing? I think that's the metric. Yeah. I think that's a really good metric.
Yeah, that's really well put. And I agree. Yeah, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for your time. Yeah, well, Irutan says that pure gold. That was pure gold. I agree.
Oh, thanks.
Cool. Let's leave some space for like audience questions. So people in the chats, if you have questions for CJ, feel free to drop it now while we have him. But while we're waiting for questions, CJ, where can people find you and Dadabots, or like your projects? What's the best way to sort of keep updated with what you all are doing?
Oh yeah. So we have a Discord, we have YouTube channel, we have Twitter. So I'm posting on Twitter every single day. Also in the Discord, there's a tweet bot. So if you're just in there, you'll see everything. And in terms of in person, I'm speaking at a bunch of events and giving workshops at some things.
Amazing.
Let's see. So I'll just start pasting in the chat. But this is also in the events IRL channel in the Discord. Let's see. We're going to be at NAMM. I'm going to be at Sonar. I'm going to be in Berlin. In UK, AI Music and Creativity Conference, on DEF CON at AI Village, and of course, East Denver.
That's a stacked schedule, bro.
Yeah, it's stacked. It's stacked. I was really happy to be invited to all these. And also check out the Harmony Discord community, which is the largest AI music Discord currently. And right now they're throwing a producer challenge in there.
Ooh,
so go for it.
I might join.
Yep.
Okay.
That's going to be every month. And right now you use Disco Diffusion. Sorry, use Dance Diffusion is the challenge. You use it in a track and see what the best one is.
Hell yeah.
Yep. And then next month we might. We're looking at other Discords to collaborate with, like Pixel Links, and and so check those out. And
hey, I was about to say, dude. I was like, maybe someday I would love to see that come to fruition. AI camp, maybe.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it seems like CJ. There's no questions in the chat. So maybe this is a good time to wrap up, bro.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh wait. There's a question. Oh, audio grading tool to help identify the good outputs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have no idea where to start on that.
Go for it. Yeah.
I mean, that is like all of MIR. That whole field of machine learning and music has been thinking about this for decades, and don't know.
For people who are unfamiliar, what is audio grading? What does that mean?
Oh, like if you have a song, rank it 1 to 10. And it said we generated a song, rank the generated thing 1 to 10. Did it sound amazing? Is this a mind-blowing song, or is it some garbage thing that has a lot of annoying frequencies in it?
Copy that. Okay.
But of course that's subjective because I like things that sound like came just straight out of like a trash compactor. Like I just turned on the garbage disposal and I threw my song in the sink, and I like that for everybody.
Yeah.
But I had a question for you. So you had expressed wanting to use your music as training data.
Yes, I would love that.
Mhm.
I would love that. Yeah, I mean, there's this music project that I'm currently building, which is essentially a music release. And, I have been using different AI models to sort of like help me create it, from ChatGPT to help you write, my manifesto, of course, with input from me. Another one would be like the image generation via Stable Diffusion, Deforum, etc., etc. And then lastly, like sample generation, because I'm very much, I enjoy the process of actually putting stuff in my DAW. And so I've experimented with Holly Plus, some of the models that you guys have, like a dance diffusion. And so, yeah, like I'm very interested in, and I guess like I'm just like fascinated by the idea of like what would it look like for people who like my music, for them to be able to also access like or generate multiple versions of my music, and they're free to sort of like use that tool or even use that as a sample to start, whatever music that they want to start. And so that's like an early idea. We should definitely talk more about that, but that's sort of like the idea in a nutshell.
Oh yeah, no, I love that, and I love seeing other artists that have kind of stepped up to be like, yes, I'll be the use my stuff, please. Not only remix it, but use it in the neural net and combine it with ways that I wouldn't have expected. And I think right now, because it's the early days of it, the artists that do that will become like very like it's like donating to a sperm bank. You're gonna have a lot of children.
Oh my god.
And so yeah, Jonathan Mann has been one of those artists. He's actually like the first and most eager to like give his collection of 5,000 songs
That's
away
amazing.
for training. And you can go and use the J-Man model in Dance Diffusion, and some people will fine tune J-Man Small. Like Dion Timmer had, I believe, fine tuned J-Man Small on his like audio library of sick bass sounds, and has been using that in his sound design. So it's kind of funny. There's a little bit of J-Man in there, because it was started from it, but then it was fine tuned. So, and you get all these like histories of stories of like where models had been previously, and it's just really, really, really interesting. So yeah, we'll love to follow up with you on that.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. That makes me so excited right now. Dude, again, thank you for just being so generous with your time and your knowledge and your insight, and also your experiences in working in this new technology, this new frontier. Really appreciate having you on the pod, bro. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Happy to be there. Thanks for inviting me. And this is sick, and I can't wait to keep tuning in every week.
Right? It's every other week. First Fridays and third Fridays of the month. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, before we all hop off, I just wanted to give a shout out to people in the chats. Thank you all. Thank you all for tuning in, you guys. Much love, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.